To this video walking us through some key moments in the first part of Book 2 of Paradise Lost, the chapter of the poem that has this incredible debate in the newly structured sort of capital of hell, Senate of hell, pandemonium. So as always, I review in the beginning of class the invocation. Again, it's my contention that keeping Milton's goal in mind throughout the reading of the poem is actually really helpful. And I think the first thing, if you're teaching a class or keeping a journal, reading it on your own, or in a book group, I think we know what the plan is here. Satan has called a session of all of the demons. A huge structure, an epically large structure is built called Pandemonium, where all the demons are gathering to determine what to do next. I don't want to preempt Book 2. I think it's really helpful based on what you know, and just based on what you know of history and the nature of reasons why people go to war and why they don't go to war. I think it'd be good as a class or a reading group to make a list of what the possibilities are. Imagine all the different choices you think the demons have right now. Do they have choices? And what are they? Make a list. And it'll be interesting to match your list with what comes to pass in this part of Book 2. Okay, again, I think this is going to be handy for the first several chapters of Paradise Lost. I might do it throughout, but what I would do is pause the video and walk through and bracket all of these lines, and in the margins, write the words that are here. So lines 1 to 42, put a bracket and write, Satan sets the stage. There are 4 major speakers before Satan ends this section of Book 2, and in your predictions, I bet some of your predictions are voiced by some of these speakers. You might not have spoken in blank verse, and hopefully you're not a demon, but maybe the predictions were similar. So Moloch is one of the demons. He's line of 51 to 105. Belial is 106 to 225, etc. We then have Beelzebub offering a challenge, as you'll see, and hell responds to that challenge. And I think these are really interesting, easily overlooked lines here. And Satan goes in the strategically strong final position in this debate. So if you need to pause this video to mark up your books, I think doing this before reading and listening is actually really helpful. Okay, so we have early in the chapter, I'm kind of strangely skipping, but early in the chapter, a variety of demons talk. Moloch offers a solution to what to do next. Belial offers a different solution. Mammon often offers a different solution. I don't think what their main thesis, each of their thesis statements are, what their goal is. This is how we should proceed. I think you'll be able to figure out what those are. I think you might get lost in some of the poetry and the allusions. Don't worry. Pay close attention to the differences of their hopes as to what the demons will do next. These are 3 very different approaches. So the 4th speaker is Beelzebub. And of the 3 speakers, I mean, the 2 basic ways to look going forward, and you could say the same for any military challenge, any country has right now, is to fight or to not fight. That's sort of like the blunt binary choice a people has. Well, Beelzebub, like all creative thinkers, offers a 3rd option. So here's what he says, and we also get some fleshed out backstory that angels would know and we don't. So I would mark up your books. I'm on Book 2, line 310 here. So this, I think, would be an obviously significant passage that most teachers would highlight when reading Book 2. Thrones and imperial powers, offspring of heaven, ethereal virtues. Okay, just like Satan, Beelzebub starts by complimenting his audience. A brilliant strategy. He's reinforcing their heavenly origins and their eternal life. Or these titles now must renounce in changing style be called princes of hell. For so the popular vote inclines here to continue and build up here a growing empire, doubtless. While we dream and know not that the King of heaven has doomed this place, our dungeon, not our safe retreat beyond his potent arm, to live, exempt from heaven's high jurisdiction, in new league banded against his throne, but to remain in strictest bondage, though thus far removed under the inevitable curb, reserved his captive multitude. So Beelzebub begins by complimenting his audience's power and then basically clarifies their tragic predicament in a very honest, not delusional way. He continues here. For he, God, to be sure, in height or depth, still first and last, will reign, sole king, another hard truth, right, if you're in hell, and of his kingdom lose no part by our revolt. So if we revolt against him, he's not going to lose anything. But over hell, extend his empire. So if we fight him and lose, he's going to take over hell too. This is the Beelzebub's rationale. And with iron scepter rule us here, as with his golden those in heaven. He has a gold scepter in heaven. He'd have an iron, less valuable one for hell. Interestingly, Beelzebub imagines God only as someone yearning for winning and more power, which is curious. And then he shifts. He shifts to the perspective of the demons he's speaking to. What sit we then, projecting peace and war? So we're debating this like binary strategy, either fight or don't fight. War has determined us and foiled with loss irreparable. Terms of peace yet none vouchsafed or sought, for what peace will be given to us, enslaved? But custody severe, and stripes and arbitrary punishment inflicted. So what's the nature of peace if you're in hell? Stripes means like the lashes when you're whipped, right? We're basically just tortured. That's the peace we're experiencing. And what peace can we return but to our power, hostility and hate, untamed reluctance and revenge, though slow, yet ever plotting how the conqueror least may reap his conquest and may least rejoice in doing what we most in suffering feel. He's imagining God rejoicing in the demon's suffering. Interesting. Nor will occasion want, nor shall we need with dangerous expedition to invade heaven, whose high walls fear no assault or siege or ambush from the deep. This is a really important, honest truth, too. So you'll notice Beelzebub not delusionally speaking hard truths to his audience, which rhetorically is really hard to do. And I think he only does it to set up the next thing he's going to say. He asks a kind of Shakespearean sort of rhetorical question. What if we find some easier enterprise? And I can imagine the demons leaning in. There is a place, this is really important. He says, there is a place, if ancient and prophetic fame in heaven err not, another world, the happy seat of some new race called man. So now the reader is saying, oh, so there was a rumor in there was a rumor in heaven that God was going to create a new race that he was going to love as much as the angels, if not more. And that bothered a third of the angels so much that they warred against God. So now Beelzebub says, about this time to be created like to us, though less in power and excellence, but favored more of him who rules above. God's going to love man more than us, than the angels. So was his will pronounced among the gods, among the angels, and by an oath that shook heaven's whole circumference confirmed. So when God announced the creation of mankind and his upcoming love for them, it shook the circumference of heaven. This is what Beelzebub is saying. There let us bend our thoughts. There meaning, I guess, what's going to be Eden or earth, right? There let us bend all our thoughts to learn what creatures there inhabit, of what mold or substance, how endued, and what their power and where their weakness, how attempted best by force or subtlety. He's basically proposing that we look at Eden as like a little lab, and we inspect mankind and see how to destroy them by force or subtlety. Watch how he concludes. It's so good. It's no wonder Beelzebub is Satan's right-hand demon. Though heaven be shut, and heaven's high arbitrator sit secure in his own strength, this place, Eden presumably, may lie exposed, the utmost border of his kingdom, left to their defense who hold it. Who's the there? Adam and Eve. Here, perhaps, some advantageous act may be achieved by sudden onset, either with hellfire to waste his whole creation, or possess all as our own, and drive, as we were driven, the puny habitants, or if not drive, and you can almost see him get excited here, seduce them to our party, that their God may prove their foe, and with repenting hand abolish his own works. You could see him thinking in real time. This reminds me of Iago and Othello a lot. He starts by saying, oh, maybe we can go and with hellfire just destroy Eden, right? Destroy Adam and Eve. And then he starts thinking, maybe we can turn them on God, their creator. And then he goes on, this would surpass common revenge and interrupt God's joy and our confusion and our joy upraise in his disturbance when his darling sons, hurled headlong to partake with us, shall curse their frail original and faded bliss, faded so soon. And then he says to all the demons, advise if this be worth attempting, or to sit in darkness here, hatching vain empires. This is in logic what is called reductio ad absurdum, reduction to absurdity. Either do the obvious thing that makes all the sense in the world, or do this stupid thing. You reduce anything that's like a real argument to actually something that's absurd and easy to figure out. Advise if my plan is worth attempting, to go and try to tempt God's creation, or just hang out here and like pretend all of these other conversations matter at all, hatching vain empires. So just this is such an important sort of setup to the end of this section of the poem. Now, a subtle, somewhat easy to miss passage, although is anything Satan says easy to miss? I'm not sure. But Satan is so clever. I just finished teaching Julius Caesar to my freshmen, and you know, one of the iconic, maybe the iconic set of moments in Julius Caesar is after Caesar's assassinated. Spoiler, you've had a long time to read, 400 years to read it. After Caesar is assassinated, they plan the speeches at the funeral, and Brutus, much to Cassius's dismay, lets Antony, Caesar's friend, speak last. You always want to have the last speaking role. You always want to have the last word. Satan, interestingly, I think it's important to be mindful that there is a debate, right? That Satan, even though he's the leader in hell, that there's some democratic sensibility there. It isn't a monarchy. That there's several demons that get to speak their mind in this debate. So he waits until all the demons have their say, and he says the following thing in response to Beelzebub's offer. He says, again, beginning with compliments. And this is very Mark Antony and Julius Caesar, friends, Romans, countrymen. He doesn't say, hey, you. O progeny of heaven, imperial thrones, with reason has deep silence and demur seized us, though undismayed. I love this quotation. Long is the way and hard that out of hell leads up to light. Why does he say that? He might be setting up his own heroism here. The thing that is being asked is incredibly difficult, he says. Our prison, strong, this huge convex of fire, outrageous to devour, immures us round ninefold. in gates of burning adamant. Adamant is that strongest substance in the classical world. And the adamant in hell is also on fire. Gates of burning adamant barred over us, prohibit all egress. These passed, if any pass. The void, profound. The world outside of hell before creation is fascinating. It's the void of unessential night receives him next. So if you escape hell, which good luck, you're in the void, wide gaping, and with utter loss of being threatens him, plunged in that abortive gulf. If thence he escape, if you escape that, into whatever world or unknown region, what remains him less than unknown dangers and as hard escape? So it's a universe of sort of mystery beyond the hell that they're in. And he just sets that up. And then he sets himself up so he just reminds them of how unimaginably difficult the task of going to like Adam and Eve will be. And then he says this, but I shall ill become this throne, O peers, and this imperial sovereignty, adorned with splendor, armed with power, if anything proposed and judged of public moment in the shape of difficult or danger could deter me from attempting, right? So he basically says, well, as hard as this is, I really wouldn't be a good leader if I didn't attempt it. Why do I assume these royalties and not refuse to reign, refusing to accept as great a share of hazard as of honor? Do alike to him who reigned. This is one of those moments where, like, out of context, it's like something Polonius would say in Hamlet. You'd think, oh, it's thine own self be true. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. All of that is like moral and makes logical sense. And meanwhile, this like awful human being is saying it. Here it's similar. He's just saying, if I have this role, I have to do this difficult thing. And so much to him do of hazard more as he above the rest high honored sits. Right? Heavy the head that wears the crown, right? Shakespeare. Go therefore, he turns to his demons. Mighty powers, terror of heaven, though fallen, intend at home, while here shall be our home. What best may ease the present misery and render hell more tolerable? Go figure out how to just tolerate being here. If there be cure or charm to respite or deceive or slack the pain of this ill mansion. Intermit no watch against a wakeful foe, while I, abroad, through all the coasts of dark destruction, seek deliverance for us all. And then this final exclamation point, this enterprise none shall partake with me. I think of Odysseus insisting on rowing the ship alone. I think of Beowulf insisting on fighting alone. I think this is part of traditional epic heroism, is the insistence on solitary fighting and solitary behavior. And then I just thought this was worth pointing out. I think there's a dramatic sort of buildup in book 2. I think that it's very theatrical. So I want to point out just the order of the demonic speakers. So the very first one is Moloch. And Moloch is a Canaanite god. He's in Leviticus. And his cult, people that were worshipped him, sacrificed children in the fiery furnace of the bronze bull that was the statue of Moloch. So when you're listening to like Milton talking about Moloch, and I think he refers to like children and mother's tears and stuff, that's what we're talking about. But Moloch is the blunt kind of warmongering demon. You could imagine him banging on the table, right? He just wants to fight. But that being said, there is some nuance. Then we have Belial, who's sort of sly and slothful. From the word meaning worthless, he's an Old Testament personification of wickedness, often associated with lust. And in Milton, he is the last demon to fall, which I think there could be some debate about what's going on there. So we have like warmongering at all cost. And then Belial saying, maybe we should just get used to being here. And then the third speaker is Mammon, who is the Syrian god of riches. And he's alluded to both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And interestingly, it's said in book 2, it's said that, or is this in book 1? It might be book 1, where he was all hunched over, even when he was in heaven, because he was paying attention to the riches of the earth of heaven. So he wants to sort of make a kingdom of hell. And then Beelzebub gave that speech which I just offered, but he's a Philistine deity. Lord of the flies is what his name means. And because it's flies, he's considered the angel of pestilence and famine, which obviously is pretty scary. But he offers sort of like the creative approach. And all of this sort of arc of a debate lands us to hell, lands us to Satan, and his incredibly dramatic sort of timing. Similar to Mark Antony, he lets all these things sort of develop, and then he comes in with a rhetorical flourish. And he sets things up by just stating how incredibly epically difficult this journey is going to be, then offers to do it, and then insists on doing it alone. So any conversation about why Satan's a hero has lots of elements to it. Knowing sort of the dramatic space, knowing how to wait, knowing how to maybe create the illusion of democracy, and then insisting on doing this epically difficult thing alone is amazing. In terms of things to journal about or to discuss, here's a few. Maybe look closely at the speeches the first three demons give, and rather than just gloss over them as like, okay, we'll read these, but we're really going to look at Beelzebub and Satan. Try to find moments that are arguments, that are good arguments. They are there, and I think that's important to not just poo-poo them because their names aren't Satan. Second, I think we learn in this section of book 2 more about the ethics of hell, the value system of hell, and the poem in general. Third, what stands out to you most about the debate? And then fourth, is there anything you're noticing in these lines that stands out? I hope this helps you, and good luck with your reading.